Okay, we're going to cover a prose fiction passage of My Glove. Just a reminder, you're going to have about 8.5 minutes per passage, and you get another extra minute for bubbling time on the ACT. So to read and answer is about 8.5 minutes, maybe a little bit less when you take that into consideration. So you've had your break. It's the reading test. Prose fiction is the first one. Hopefully you've had a snack, you've gone to the restroom, and you're energized and ready to go. So 8 different types of questions. What we're really going to worry about are the two main categories they fall into: inference and reference. And prose fiction is way over here on the inference side, which means that a lot of the questions are going to be ones you kind of have to read into a little bit, but every answer can be supported by the text. So this is one of my favorite ones we talk about in class sometimes. Summers in Alabama had always been hot. Pause for a minute and read this passage if you haven't already. And when you do, this question's interesting. The narrator considers the weather in Alabama in the summertime to be so cool and breezy and pleasantly familiar are definitely out. And if you only read the first 2 sentences, you might go pleasantly familiar. You might even go cool and breezy if you didn't read the whole paragraph, maybe, because it says, it's cool and definitely she's going back to childhood memories. So if you're only reading that, maybe. But humid and extremely hot, unbearably hot and miserable, one of those has to be the right answer. So how do you decide between the two? And you might luck into the right answer by saying, well, it's humid and extremely hot, because he talks about the unwashed woolen blanket in the water, which is humidity. But unbearably hot and miserable also seems like it could be a possibility. The reason comes down to the word unbearable. She can bear it. She didn't die. She didn't turn around and leave. So it's able to be borne. It's bearable. So for reading, there's several strategies you can approach. Read and answer, Google summary and answer, map and answer. For prose fiction, really one of these first 2 works. Mapping generally doesn't work, so we're not going to do mapping for prose fiction. So let's look at this text, My Glove. Hopefully you have the text in front of you. And what you're going to do is go through and Google summary, which means you're going to have 1 to 3 words describing each paragraph you read, and also identify any characters or transitions you note. So this helps if you're trying to read faster, pick up speed, right? You're moving a little more quickly than you're comfortable because you're trying to get through that 8.5 minutes, or if you just have trouble remembering what you read. Okay, so here's mine, right? So my Google summary passage, My Glove, or just Glove, is the first paragraph. Father's expectations. It's a girl. She practices on the sly, unsure of herself, talks about boys and girls. She confessed, dad's reaction, and the ball. So now we're going to go to the questions. It can be most reasonably inferred from the passage that compared to the narrator, to what the narrator thought her father's reaction would be to her purchase of a baseball glove, her actual reaction is. So where are we going to find this? So her father's reaction, right, will be over here, expectations. That's what she's expecting to happen. And her actual reaction is going to be over here. So we enlarge these. His rote response, you don't want that. And she talks about other things that didn't want. So she thinks her father is not going to be supportive. But his actual reaction is, he whaps his fist a few times in the glove, bends it back and forth, and talks to her about, how she needs a better ball. So it's going to be less harsh and dismissive than she expected it to be. Number 2, in the final paragraphs, lines 67 to 69, so we're going to be here. The predominant approach of the narrator as she responds to her father's pointers and anecdotes can best be described as. So she has these 2 lines here. I said I knew about that. I said that was true. So that both times she's saying, yeah, Dad, I know. My own daughter gives those same responses. So honest and direct. She says that she already knew. So that's pretty straightforward. All right, number 3. The narrator claims that baseball glove she bought in 1960 was modern in that it had. So this one's directly from the text. Okay, so we're going to find in this paragraph about the glove, and it was a modern glove in that it had shape. So it had shape. So D, that was just straight from the text. Number 4. The passage most strongly supports that the narrator generally responded to your father's comment, you don't want that, with. So we already read this when we were talking about what she expected the response to be. And so she doesn't have any surprise. Other things I didn't want, right? She's already heard it before. You don't want a glove. I also don't want blue jeans or a bicycle or a penknife or a fishing pole, a permanent wave, or a pet of any sort. So there's no surprise there. She doesn't express anger, no pity, no appreciation. You can't infer that she would express that. Although you might think your own emotions might go to that, but you cannot put our emotions onto the narrator. Number 5, based on the passage, which of the following statements represents one of the narrator's typical experiences with playing baseball or softball at school? So we're going to find that here, right? When it talks about boys and girls and what they do at school. In the distant day, or perhaps only that parochial school, the boys and girls were not allowed to play sports together at recess, and none of the girls had gloves. So the one that supports this is the narrator would play softball with girls, and she would be the only one to play with a glove of her own, right? It doesn't say anything about a few girls had gloves, only the narrator. She couldn't play with the boys in B and C, so the only one that works is D. Which of the following statements, if spoken by the narrator, would best capture the sentiment of the narrator's comment in lines 76 to 79? Okay, so 76 to 79, he whapped his fist in it a few times and then took it with both hands and bent it back and forth as if to reprimand it for the affection of its deep pocket. So I could tell my father wished he had kept one of his baseball gloves. Doesn't say that. Choice G. Sorry about that. Bell's ringing. It was this: if my father were scolding my glove for its design, my father bent the glove too forcefully. My father didn't want to try out the glove. So G was if my father were scolding my glove for his design. So choice G, right? So reprimand is the scold. 7, details in the passage suggest that the narrator's father considered a tennis ball to be. So we're going to find that here. He talks about the ball, right? He said that's how you ruin a good ball. Is that the best you can do? So what's the choice going to be? A less than ideal choice for practicing baseball, even for the narrator. Number 8, in the passage, the narrator describes a brick wall of a college dormitory. Okay, so this is where she's practicing hitting it off the wall. She also talks about the wall over in the last 2 paragraphs. But here she says, I found a clandestine battery mate, the wall of a brick college dormitory that had no windows on the lowest story. So the battery mate, choice J. 9, the narrator explains that she didn't carry her baseball glove in around her pocket for which of the following reasons. This is about her uncertainty. And it says she walked around out of sight with the glove tucked under her arm, wishing she could shove it in her back pocket like the boys. But of course, my pants, when I was allowed to wear pants, had no pockets because my mother had made them. So B. And number 10, the narrator characterizes herself as coming only fairly clean because, right, so here, when she's confessing, fairly clean, I kept the hardball under wraps. So she didn't tell about the hardball she had owned. So there's all the answers I had, so you can look at them and double check your paper. So let me know if you have any questions. And you want to keep practicing to find the strategy that works best for you. Reading and answering a Google summary. Of course, if you have time and you can remember what you read, reading and answering, best strategy. If not, I want you to have another strategy available to you.